Welcome back to another weekly edit. This week I'm back in ON1 Photo RAW and I'm quite excited about this week's image. One, because the subject for me was quite inspirational, and two, the black and white edit is something I think that this image lends itself quite well to. The image was captured back in 2017 in Namibia during a photo workshop that I co-led with Rand. And it was while we were on a long, on a long transfer day essentially. But I think it was from Sources but we were on our way to Spitskoppe in Namibia, and we stopped next to the road to photograph some other things. And I saw John, one of the workshop attendees, just sort of walking back to the car in the road, long gravel road. And I just thought it would make a perfect sort of environmental portrait. So I asked him to just stop for a moment and essentially pose for the image. A little bit about John actually. So he was, I think at the time of the workshop, he was almost 90 years old. So 88, 89 years old, from England. Traveling around Namibia with us in quite warm temperatures and arid landscape. So a lot of inspiration there. Anyway, let's jump into the edit and let's get going. So as you can see here, I have ON1 Photo RAW open. This is the 2024 version, as you can see up here. Now, ON1 has actually come a long way in terms of their application, and currently, for me, it's actually in quite a good place, especially compared to something like Lightroom. It's very responsive, it's fast, and it's actually quite a pleasure to use. One of the main things is just it's not only for me fun to use, it's also efficient. I don't need to do a lot in it. So here we have the image. I'll click on it and then hit D. Or if I go back to the library views by hitting G, you can also just double click on the image and it'll open it up. If we go back quickly to the library, I just want to quickly have a look there. Yeah. Okay, so this image was shot on a Nikon D3X digital SLR, big camera body, and on a Nikon 24 to 85, sort of multi-purpose zoom lens. This was on my camera that I used to capture the behind the scenes, etc. for the workshop. Or when my other camera was on the tripod, I could use this to sort of do grab shots of other elements within the landscape or of people, etc. Anyway, so here we have the raw image. And on the right hand side, we have all the adjustments we can do. So Brilliance AI is sort of ON1's take on sort of AI image editing. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm just going to stick to the standard exposure, contrast, etc. as you can see. Now ON1 also has additional panels at the top here. Local, effects, sky and portrait. Sky is for the sky replacement. So it automatically creates a sky mask there when I click on it. Doesn't do any changes though, so I'm just going to deselect that. And portrait, you can add people. That's it. Well, it's actually automatically finding faces. Let's see what it does in this instance. Not sure if it'll find anything. No. Anyway, let's cancel that. So now I think I might have mentioned this in a previous video of mine, on one of my previous ON1 videos. So ON1 has got, like in Lightroom, got a lot of the basic tone adjustments under tone and color here in the develop panel or module. But what it doesn't have here is things like tone curve, color grading, etc. Now you can add that under effects by going here and saying add filter, and there are many to choose from. Now I've made a little preset, so if we go down to the bottom left here, click on open up the preset panel under my sort of section here, and I've made one called, I think it's Lightroom Flow. So when I click on that, if you have a look on the right hand side here, it will add all those in the develop module in Lightroom, you have all those panels like curves, color balance, which would be the color grading. You have vignette and you have film grain. So that basically gives me sort of a workspace setup like in Lightroom, so that I don't forget about them essentially. So not too much to be done to this image. So again, before I start the edit, I just like to have a think about where do I want to go with this image. Now, if we have a look at it, it's fairly sort of well exposed in the sense that highlights are within range. There are no shadows that are too dark, or illegible at least. And all I want to do here is basically just brighten up the image a little bit, increase the contrast, and bring out some of those desert colors. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about that for the color edit. For the black and white edit, I want to increase the contrast quite considerably once I've converted it to black and white, because the default black and white conversion is generally quite neutral, low contrast. And then definitely add some grain. I might even add a bit of grain in the color edit. So with that said, now I know in my mind what I want to do, so I can actually skip over a lot of things within the program that I won't necessarily need. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do actually is close this preset panel, and then I'm going to crop the image. So it's pretty level, I'm not going to worry about that. It's already, the aspect ratio is already set to the original image ratio, so that's fine. And then I'm just going to drag it in from the left here. Oh, why is it getting stuck? Oh, there we go. Stuck for a moment there. To about, just to place John there on the left hand side third. And then I'm going to commit that change by either just hitting enter, or you can also click on that little arrow at the top there. So that's the crop done. Now I just want to increase the exposure ever so slightly. Contrast here I'm going to leave alone. Highlights, I might take that up a little bit. If I bring it down, it's not having great. Actually want to increase the contrast like I mentioned, and take the highlights up just a tad. Midtones, very nice slider in ON1. I'm going to increase that ever so slightly just to add a little bit of brightness to the image. That's a bit more of a less dramatic effect than exposure. Shadows, I'm going to open them up a tad. And then whites, I'm also going to drag up. What I'm going to do is actually enable the, if you have a look here on the levels, which is the histogram, I'm going to enable the clipping warnings, and I'm going to drag the whites up quite a bit just to see where we can take them. And there you can see on his shoulder it starts to blow out. But that, to my eye, that's already looking a little bit much, so I'm just going to drag them back a tad to about there. And then let's just see if we quickly zero them out from there to there. So that's just added a nice bit of brightness boost to the image. I'm going to disable the clipping warnings. And then blacks, in this case, I'm going to take them up a little bit. I found lately that I've been more fan of a more faded look in the blacks, or less contrasty look in the blacks, but still a bit of a contrasty look in the whites. Then we have things like structure. These are global adjustments, and haze. You can see if I drag that sort of back and forth what that does. I want to add these selectively a little bit later. Oh, okay, zero it out. And then moving on to temperature. It's not far off to my eye. I'm gonna cool it down ever so slightly, I think, to about there. Let's go back to the history quickly. So that was before the temperature adjustment. That was after. Might cool it down maybe to about there. Yeah. Wait, where did that go? Color. There we go. Tint I think is fine. Saturation I'm going to leave alone. Now interestingly, let's just zoom into 100% here. I have a look on his arms and on his face. ON1, I'm going to, sorry, got ahead of myself. So let's zoom out. I'm going to increase the vibrance a little bit to enhance the color in general scene. Now you can see that's done quite a bit here for the soil, for the road, for the sky, and for his red hat. It generally vibrance leaves the skin alone, but in this case it has added a little bit of a color cast there. You zero that out and bring it back. Just a bit of redness and orange here under the arms and in the face. Now ON1 has got a little option you can check here. It says reduce vibrance on skin. So let's see what that does. And it's not a major effect, but you can see if you keep a close eye on his face, if I disable that, you see that little color cast or the red and orange comes back to his face, and if I enable it, it just takes it away. Now on top of that, we have this purity section under tone and color in the develop module in ON1, where actually, so if the highlights do seem like they have a color cast, when we drag the highlights up, you can just have a look actually both again on John here and maybe on in the background here. If I drag that up, you can see the highlights become a little bit desaturated. So that's a way of removing the color cast. Also in his pants here, that's picking up the color from the road, and then just it renders it a bit more neutral. Again in shadows, same story. I'll drag that up, see what that does. Yeah, that's not really. Yeah, so that's a nice little thing in ON1. Then noise and sharpening. This was shot at ISO 100. It was bright mid daylight, which is one of the reasons why I positioned John sort of with his face away from the sun, essentially backlighting. Although it was pretty much noon, I think, but you can see his face is in shadow. To avoid those harsh shadows on the face, essentially. So what I was trying to say is that there's not going to be a lot of noise. The image is sharp because it was in focus. ON1 again, under noise and sharpening, it's got classic version, like you have a Lightroom, luminance, detail, color, etc. And it's got its AI versions. So I'm going to use, what does that look there? I'm going to use no noise AI. And it's going to take a moment to work down the bottom here. And then once that's worked, you can actually, it's got a before and after line, but you can drag the image a bit back and forth. So that would have been before. So it's showing us without adjustments. And then with, before, after. And you can also add some sharpening. Micro sharpening is already at 100. I'm going to drag that up fair amount. Look to about 220, and then you can see the effect I said. If you have a look on his face here, a little bit blurry, and now it's not only noise free, it's also nice and sharp, but not in an unnatural way. So let's commit those changes by clicking. Well, you can click that arrow or you can click apply there. So it's just quickly processing. I should have clicked on apply. There we go. So now that's applied with the lock. If you click on it again, it goes back into no noise, and you can adjust the parameters. So we're just going to click on apply. So that's going to lock that down for us. Takes a moment to think. There we go. And now here you can see how lovely noise-free and sharp the image is, especially on his face, etc. So let's just quickly zoom out again. And then lens corrections. So maybe you could have done this earlier. So it's already picked up what it is, but if we just enable that, just going to create some of the, correct some of that barrel distortion and vignetting. If it doesn't pick up the lens automatically, you can just select the brand here under make, which in this case was a Nikon, and then find the lens. And then you can manually adjust some of the aspects here as well. Transform, I'm not going to do any of that. Local adjustments. So here you can essentially add adjustments that you would develop under tone and color, but you can do it in a local way. So if we add adjustment, it's going to add the adjustment section with a mask, and we can here choose what type of mask we want. What's quite nice is you can use or select also from ON1's AI features. So you can select background, foreground, which essentially is John there. There's flora, so it automatically picks up the trees there, as you can see. Natural ground, interesting. Okay, that's quite interesting. Water, yeah, it's not water. It thinks a bit of the background. There's water. There's the sky, obviously. Mountain, bottom left there. It's not bad. And you can also see I'm mousing over this, and it's not thinking it's really responsive. And people, which is John. And then you can select your paint in or paint out. So essentially here I want the effect to be on him. So I'm going to select paint in. I'm going to say people, and I'm going to apply. Okay, I'm just going to close that out. So what it's done, it's automatically applied a -1 exposure preset here. So I'm just going to zero that out. So now we have all this adjustments which you can do just on John here. All I want to do actually is increase the midtones on him a little bit, as well as the shadows, just like that. So very easily we've gone from there to there, and then perhaps increase the contrast here just a tad. And take the saturation down ever so slightly. Might take that midtones down a tad as well. And the shadows. From there to there. If we want to visualize the mask, we can click on it there, and we can click on this little, I don't know what those goggles. And you can see it's done a pretty good job. I mean, I haven't made any adjustments to the mask here. We can increase the feather if we want. We can density. We can also refine it by via levels and also window here, etc. But I don't want to do any of that. So there we go. So I think for John that's pretty good. And now I'm going to move to effects, which I mentioned. That applies all these modules as per my preset. So moving from top to bottom, curves, I just want to add a very light S-curve for some nice bit of contrast there. Before, after, and I want to lift the black point here, just ever so slightly. Now, even just that light S-curve for me is quite strong. So the nice thing on ON1 is you can adjust the opacity of each of these modules. So I'm just going to drag that all the way down to 0, and then just start dragging it to the right. So to about 30%. So instead of playing around with a curve, I can actually just adjust the opacity, which is quite nice. Dynamic contrast. This, at least in my little preset, it already applies as a very light version of it. It's sort of like a little sharpening, contrast, dehaze all mixed into one. So we just zoom into 100% here. I keep a little bit of John and of the background here in the frame, and then I'm going to disable it. And you can see it's not a major effect. It just adds a little bit of a contrasty punch to the small details in the image. And then again, the opacity you can sort of take up, down. I'm going to leave that at 50% where it was. And then color adjustment would be like the color mixer in Lightroom. You can select different colors to adjust them. Now here, this is what I actually wanted to do. So with this, I want to enhance the colors of the soil here, of the more red in the desert. So I'm going to click on the mask icon here. And like we just saw, I'm going to select the natural ground. And I'm going to apply that. Let's just quickly have a look at the mask here. I mean, it's done a pretty good job. I'm going to feather that ever so slightly. I'm going to devisualize it. And then I am going to select I'm actually going to select, use the eyedropper. And select some of this swell here. And then I'm going to adjust saturation. And take the saturation up. Go back to just you. Aha! Shall we just invert the mask, shall we? So there's actually adjusting the swell. Sorry about that. So take that saturation up. You can see there, drag it all the way down. all the way up. So increases saturation quite a bit. I like those reds coming out. And hue-wise, so you're going to leave that alone. Zero that out. Brightness, take it down slightly. Let's have a look at that mask again. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so that was before, after. Just add a bit of a nice increased orangey redness to the ground there. Color balance, so this would be like color grading in Lightroom. Again, here you have some lovely presets. You can sort of just click on that and then mouse over them. Vivid, warm, cool, warm highlights, etc. There was one here that I quite liked actually. Orange cool. So we're going to click on orange cool. So that's essentially, you know, warmer midtones, neutral highlights, and cooler shadows. So let's just have a quick look at the before, after. So again, it adds a nice bit of warmth to the ground, to the sky, and we can play with the opacity here. It's actually, it's not that strong an effect. I'm going to leave it at 100%, but I'm going to click on the mask, and then I am going to go on people, and I want to paint. It's already on paint out. So people, apply, and then there we go. So now it's automatically removed the people, which is John in this case, from being affected by the color grade, or by the effect essentially. So yeah, great. Lastly, just a quick vignette. So you have some presets here. You can mouse over them. Now generally, what did I do there? Let's just reset that quickly. The big softy is quite a nice one. So if you want to click on that, it's just generally a little bit strong for me, especially on color images. So I made a slightly different version of that, called it's CM Softy 1. So it's just a bit of a toned down version. So select that, and then we can go on a before, after, just focusing the eye on the center of the image. Nice thing with ON1 with a vignette, you can have at the bottom here, you have two options. You can fit to canvas, and you can select the center point. Now let me just quickly visualize this vignette. So I'm going to take the brightness all the way down and the feather all the way to 0. So now we can see where this vignette is. And then if I want to select the center point or move the vignette somewhere, I can select this little icon here, click on it, and then anywhere on the image I can click. So in this case, I'll click on John here. So it's just going to move the vignette there. I want it a little bit lower maybe as a center point, more or less there. And then I can zero out the brightness. Actually, let's just take the feather back up to, it was on 100, and then brightness I can take down again, like that. Yeah, there we go. I mentioned grain as well, so we zoom into 100%, you can see the image is noise-free, super sharp. And yeah, lately I've been adding grain to pretty much everything, just to introduce a little bit of that film-like effect, ambiance, vibe to it. Under film grain, you have a lot of different options. You can just mouse over them. It's very responsive. It will, it sort of visualizes the grain immediately. I made some presets as well, just to be a little bit more subtle, but not using one of them. I generally like Fujifilm Neopan at 400 ISO. So we select that. It's a little bit of a strong effect. So I'm going to take the size down. So a smaller grain size to about 75. And then play around with the amount. So I'm actually going to increase the amount to about 80. And then we have a before, after. And again, I play around with the opacity to as an extra level of adjustability, fine tuning, to about 80% or after. Great. So yeah, I think that's the color edit. Not bad time-wise. I think most of the time was again taken up by me trying to explain things, but yeah, that's as simple as that. I think let's leave the color edit there. As you can see, very, very straightforward, easy to do. Masking also very, very intuitive, very quick in ON1. Let's quickly do the black and white edit if you want to stick around for that, and then we will get on with it. Okay, so I'm going to press G to head back into the library module or into the thumbnail view, and then I'm going to right click on the image and select create version. It's going to create a new version or a virtual copy, if you're familiar with Lightroom terminology, with adjustments applied. I'm going to double click on it to head back into the edit module, develop module. It's just taking a moment to, I think, to read the sidecar file, because in ON1 you don't need to import images into a catalog, which is quite nice as well. There we go. Okay, so now, I mean, in my other previous weekly edits, I played around with some different ways of converting an image to black and white. In ON1, what works quite well for me is under effects, is to add, let me just quickly close the curves. There is, it's got, if you click on add filter, it's got the channel mixer, but it also has a black and white effect, essentially, or filter, which is globally applied. So I'm going to click on that. And now it's immediately the image is rendered in black and white. But it's quite low contrast, very sort of faded out black and white. Now my goal, I like a contrasty black and white, especially in this midday high contrasty scene. Again, we have opacity, we can select different color channels. Again, we have green filter, yellow filter, red filter, etc. Just going to reset that quickly. And you can also select, it's got presets here as well. You can sort of mouse to them. It will apply the different effects with grain. And well, let's reset that. And you can also actually, in here, you can select the conversion, like as with the color mixer. And then you can sort of select the color channel. Let me reset that. So I'm going to stick to the color response, and then we can play around with the different color channels that are present within the image. So the red is going to affect his hat there, as you can see, and some of the swirl. So I'm going to lighten that a little bit in his face. Yellow is going to be the road mostly, and some of the ground as well. I'm actually going to take that down a tad. Green, there's not a lot of green in this image. The trees are not green. Aqua, also not, probably a little bit in the sky, top there. And then blue, I don't want to darken the sky, so I'm going to drag that to the left quite a bit. And, oh, sorry, got a battery warning there. Let's speed this up, shall we? And then magenta, I think is mostly going to be a little bit in the skin. I'm going to leave that at 0. A nice thing about the black and white model is you have similar aspects that you would have in develop, or tone and color. So brightness, and take that up a little bit. Quickly going to go to levels, enable clipping warnings. Now you can see that the histogram is quite more towards the middle to the right of middle, which means we have quite a bit of room to play with before blowing out any highlights or clipping any shadows. So here I am going to take highlights up not too much. Whites I'm going to take up a fair bit. It's blowing out on the shoulder a tad, but I'm not too worried about that. And then blacks I'm going to take down just to increase more of the contrast. Okay, let's disable the clipping warnings. Disable? Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see it's the little triangles turned red just to warn me it's sort of starting to blow out. And then toner would be yeah, again, another color effect. Again, you can mouse over these and see what they do. I'm going to leave that alone. And then film grain. Now we already have film grain in the image, but if we didn't add it before, you can add it here as well, or you can double down and add it more. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is just quickly go back out there and then go to curves, and then take the black point down, but not all the way, just to there, and then just increase the contrast on the tone curve a little bit more. Let's go back to history. Did that? blacks. Yeah, so that just added a nice bit of contrast. Yeah, I think that's pretty much that. What we could maybe quickly do is under adjustments, is add an adjustment, but then select sky, apply, and it's again add a little bit of a default preset there, and then I'm gonna try the midtones here. So I'm gonna take down the midtones in the sky, and then increase the contrast slightly, and actually decrease the exposure a little bit. There we go. Yeah. So if we have a look quickly on the initial black and white conversion and the final black and white conversion, nice bit of contrast. And lastly, also with the black and white, I just want to increase the strongness of the vignette, and I'm going to take the size down more towards John there. So without vignette, with vignette. And I think that's going to be that. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me again on the weekly edit on ON1 Photo RAW this week. Again, yeah, it's a very, it's, for lack of a better word, it's just fun, intuitive to use. It's different than Lightroom, but everything you need is there. And I find I get to where I want to go actually quite a bit quicker, sometimes even. And their way of rendering the raw image is also not too shabby. Yeah, so I will see you in the next weekly edit or one of my other videos. Thanks again for being here, and I will see you in the next one.